then, before we kind of get into how we test the model, is what's known as generating the line of best fit, which for all intents and purposes is going to represent the raw score prediction formula. So when we describe a line, remember the raw score prediction formula is all about y predicted is equal to A, the y-intercept, plus B slope, and the X particular statistic. And so we're trying to estimate an unknown outcome variable of interest in that sample in order to determine what that value would be in the next person, let's say, that I measure an X variable on. This is really helpful when we have data sets that are one or more X predictor variables. And so the gradient and the intercept in which we can generate these lines is going to have some level of difference. And so if we were to take a look at some particular situations here on this slide, you can see that what happens when we have the same y-intercept, value of y when x equals 0, but the gradients or the slopes are different. And you can see that on the left side here, under the outcome, just under the 50, that the y-intercept is exactly the same, but the slopes, both the red line as well as the green line, are moving in different directions. So you can have two different regression lines and the slope could be different, but the y-intercept can be the same. On the other hand, we can also have a situation where the slopes are the same and the y-intercepts are different. And you see that really well outlined on the right side of this particular slide, where you have sort of those parallel lines with green, blue, and red. And so it's important to understand that when you're generating multiple regression lines, if that's your research question of interest, that the y-intercept could be the same and you can have different slopes, or you can have different slopes and the same y-intercept. And so just make sure that you're aware of that. Really, why we are interested in these lines of best fit is that the line of best fit functions under what's known as the least squares principle. And what this basically means is that when I explore a scatter plot, imagine that this slide did not have the green line going through it, that this is the single line that is going to minimize the amount of error in the data set, right? So if I was to draw a single line through all the data points, it's going to reduce the amount of distance between all of those data points, meaning the data point has to travel the smallest distance to touch the green line. This is what's known as the least squares principle. So when we generate a line of best fit, where that line is placed is directly proportional to reducing the distance or the amount of error that exists in this particular data set. And on average, it's not going to necessarily be the same distance for every single data point, but on average, it's the best line for all data points because it reduces it for the total sample. It may not be, the furthest distance for, let's say, this blue value right here that has the 300, but it is the best line for all the data points that we have in this scatter plot. So I hope that's helpful. So now that we talked a little bit about the line of best fit, the least squares principle, and we talked a little bit about the different types of formulas that we can use to generate regression lines, let's go ahead into the next video and talk a little bit about how we're going to test the model. We'll see you there.